with multiple offers, with people's type budget. We wanted to look at the top 9 ways to improve your chances of getting an offer accepted other than price.
Okay.
I mean, obviously price is important.
Price is very important.
But there are other ways that you can beat out offers. We have it right here. So, all right. So first one I want you to talk about is, what is your opinion about earnest money? This is the money that you got to put in at the beginning of the contract.
So earnest money deposit, EMD, is the very first impression that they have as soon as you're looking at an offer, because that's like the very first one on the top that you see. Usually about 1% is where I recommend, but depending on the home and how much do you want this house, if you want to make it happen, you better come up with maybe maximum 2%,
right?
1 to 2%.
So if we're talking 600,000, we're talking $6,000. So, but yeah, so it really put your best foot forward. Obviously, it is live money that you have to deposit, and if you don't follow through with your part of the contract, you can lose it. So just keep that in mind, that you got to have a very diligent realtor looking over all your contingencies. So definitely. The higher the better, 1 to 2%.
1 to 2%, and that shows like how much you are actually interested and you want to, you are vested in this particular home. So
now I've seen some like in Lake Tahoe, 2 to 5%. So just keep that in mind. Some chunks of money that really prove that you're really interested in the property. So it does lock up your money, and so keep that in mind. Talking about closing date. So, we're talking about the top 9 ways you can improve your offer other than price. Closing date, and that kind of goes back to, you got to be working with a real estate professional that will get on the phone, call the buyer's or the seller's agent, and find out what the seller needs. If you're a buyer, it's nice to take in consideration what you need, but you're trying to buy someone's house. You better find out what they need. So when we're talking about closing date, what's important about that?
So like you mentioned, just make sure that you know what the seller needs. So if they need a rent back, right? Or if they need like an extended time to like close their home. So find out like what is it that the seller needs and try to be a little bit flexible on that closing date. So communication is so important in these transactions. I cannot stress enough on how many agents don't call. They just put in an offer and then expect the other person to just look at their offer. But there is just so much more due diligence that you do want to do before you write that offer. So.
Yeah, but we get a lot of offers on agents just put in offers, never make call.
And then especially for the sellers, because they're just like, they've lived there for so long, so there is just so much. Sometimes they're not prepared. Like only after the offer comes, they're like, okay, now I think we are ready to move. So you definitely want to call ahead and find the story and make sure you get that good closing date that works for both parties. That's
number 2 out of 9. Talk about loan application. What should you have ahead of time? So we get how the contracts works in Washington County is within 5 days of a signed agreement, you have to have a pre-approval letter. But Neetha, should you have that when you turn in your offer?
Well, I won't even start working with the buyer if they don't have a pre-approval offer. So I have my first buyer consultation, and then the first place they're going is to a lender to get a pre-approval letter. Once we have a pre-approval letter and we know what the budget is, then I'm showing homes, because that's the right way to do it. They know what they're getting into. I know what to show them. So
well, and then it helps a seller know that you can afford it. Now, it's not ironclad by any stretch of the imagination, but they do run credit occasionally, and they do look at debt to income on a superficial level. So everyone involved should want that. Buyer, seller, agents, because we don't want to waste time with people who can't.
And then even sometimes the buyers, they just think that, yes, I can afford it. They want to look at the homes first, and then when we come to the table, I mean, I've done this for so long, so there were times when I got burnt out. So now I have my systems in place, and we are not moving forward without a pre-approval.
Okay, and it helps your chances if you're a buyer or the seller. Get that in right with the offer.
You need that first.
Talk about appraisal contingency. What is an appraisal contingency, and what are you seeing from a perspective of a seller? What do they want to see?
So they want to.
Appraisal contingency is what?
So basically, if you are financing your home and you have a lender, they are going to send an appraiser to see how much the house is worth. So ideally, the listing agent is pricing it right, and it should appraise at the list price. But if not, it can be higher, which is good. But if it goes lower, then that's when we go back onto the table to negotiate. So, and if you do want to win in an environment like this where it's multiple offers, then, and if you know where the comps are, maybe sometimes like back in 2020, 2021, we just like waived all the appraisal contingencies to make it easy. So
I don't see that quite as much.
yeah, we don't see that anymore, but that's just something that
What's
is an option in the multiple offer situation.
What's a good time frame for to have that removed? So, because the name of the game is removing contingencies in a real estate transaction. So, if we want to get that removed, how many days are you putting on the contract for your buyers?
15.
Okay, so 12 to 15 days, 2 weeks. In this environment,
Yep.
when everyone was refinancing 4 or 5 years ago, you couldn't get it done, it would be 30 days. But now there's people a little hungry, and there's not as many refinances, so you can usually get it done. So usually you want to get that done in the first 12 to 15 days.
Yep.
And what's the cost, approximately?
I don't know, 400 to 750.
Yep.
Depending on the
And it all
house
depends
and
on your
the
lender.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't have any control of that, and they're very tight on this. All right, so that's moving on to loan contingency. So we have all these contingencies in the contract. So you're starting to see the name of the game is to get those checked off and done as quickly as possible. So now we've done the appraisal contingency. Now we're losing the loan. So obviously that's when the lender says, yep, they can afford it. We've looked at all their credit. What is a good number are you seeing with your buyers on getting that removed?
Well, I usually do 25.
25? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have one that's really aggressive right now. He says he can get it done in 14.
Yeah, I mean, we do have lenders who can get it done that quickly, but usually I see that, where they have that hiccup that they need like HOA docs that takes 10 days. If there's no HOA, then probably yes, but HOA docs usually take that 10
Right.
day time.
So that's a good point, is that you don't want to ever put things on this contract that you can't fulfill, because that goes back to your earnest money.
Yep.
If you're not, you could lose it because of that. So.
So you're risking your.
So yeah, I see most lenders are comfortable with anywhere from like 21 to 25 is basically standard.
21 to 25.
And you can, if they can get it done quicker, great. But there are some hiccups like HOA docs that they want to see.
Yep.
That's a good point. That was number 5. And this is often the offer and acceptance we're going through. So looking at, this is a good one. Now, to the life of me, I don't understand sellers agents, but we're talking about the SRPD, which is the Seller's Real Property Disclosure Form, which is a form that sellers have to fill out to let buyers know of any hidden or defects that they know is wrong with the house.
Yep.
Now, typically, when her and I list houses, we've been taught to have that up front.
Up front, and it has to be in person. I usually have, that's the first document that I'm taking to the.
And we don't fill it out.
Yep.
We hand it to the seller and they fill it out. But we usually have that as a requirement to submit an offer on any listing we have. We want you to sign that, because that's just another way that things can go sideways.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure. But so the tip on this one is, if it's available, buyers should have it signed up, correct?
Yeah. So your pre-approval, your offer, your SRPD, check on those, any other additional documents that the seller agent has put, make it a packet, send it to them.
Organized.
Just make it easy for them.
Yeah. And I usually, I don't usually put just one PDF out. I send, here's the offer, here's the lender. I get these crazy packets from some of these agents that have like 50 documents all mixed in there. So on my listings, I like it to be individual documents so I can look at them.
Yep.
So, but sign the SRPD up front. It just shows you that you can, again, are on top of the game and getting out in front of this, because that's another contingency that if you don't, then that's a way that you can potentially get out of the contract and the seller something like that. So, all right, the big one, we get this a lot, physical inspections.
Oh, the inspections, yeah.
So let's talk about, so we have the loan contingency, we have the appraisal contingency, we have the SRPD contingency, we have the HOA document contingency. So we have all these contingencies that we're trying to, as a buyer, get done as quickly as possible
Yep.
to stay on. But now we're talking about the big one, which a lot of people are concerned about, physical inspection. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to home inspections, physical inspections.
So if I'm on the seller's side, like I'm doing right now, I'm getting a pre-inspections done before I'm putting the home on the market. So we know what's gonna come in the inspections because that's really a big one. So on the buyer side, when I'm writing the inspections, like if you look at this
Yep.
document, there's just tons of inspections.
There's 21 through 41, so
Yes.
there's 20 different ones you can select.
Yeah, and then if you check every single one without thinking through on what this community is, what this house is, and there might be some that's unnecessary. And the seller agent or the seller is looking at it, they're like, oh my God, that's a lot of contingencies that this buyer wants. So you want to be very diligent on what you're checking and what's actually needed, than just saying that I'm just going to check all the boxes and then I'm just going to do an addendum later to remove them.
Right, yeah, because we get ones that don't even have a fireplace. We're doing the fireplace inspection.
Yeah.
And now we're not saying by any stretch that it's always up to the buyers,
Yes.
but we're gonna say, hey, buyer, we're looking at the MLS, we're looking at the Washington County, there's no fireplace, we should probably waive that one.
Yeah.
So, and then a lot of places don't have well inspections,
Yeah, the
septic.
septic. I mean, I had one that checked the septic, and I'm like, why?
Because if it doesn't have a septic, don't do that. So it's about putting a clean offer together.
Yeah.
And what's time frames do you feel comfortable with?
Well, I mean, I have inspectors on hand that can give me an appointment quickly, so I try to get it done as soon as possible because that's the biggest contingency in any offer. So I'm taking the first appointment, but usually, I mean, if it's a busy season, then I'll take 14 days.
Okay, that's aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually do 15 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about pre-inspections, because we get a lot of those done. It's a good habit, in my opinion, because you can. The nice thing about getting a pre-home inspection done if you're a seller is that you get to basically mitigate issues that would come up later in the transaction.
Correct.
So you can decide, hey, I'm going to disclose this. That's just one thing. And then it's a nice thing to have for a liability issue, because if someone comes back on you, you can say, hey, I didn't know. That's why I had a home inspection done.
Right.
So do you have any difficulty with, you get one done that you're getting on your license, do you have people come in and say, I'm a little leery about using the seller's inspection report, and then they have their own?
No, they always have their own again. Yes,
Okay.
but it is so easy for me to tell the buyer agent that, hey, this is what the inspection came through. We've done all these things. So it's like an upfront thing that I can actually educate the buyer agent too, that, hey, when you are taking your client to show the property,
this should be included in your price or
yeah, so just
credit
make sure that show this one, this is great, or these are some of the things. So the buyer is educated up front before the offer is coming, that they know exactly what they're getting into. So that, I feel like that's just a better, really smooth process.
Right.
And that helps with this contingency.
Yeah. So great information. Reinspection. So this is something that doesn't happen very often, but there's a little box on contract on page 7.
Yeah.
That who is responsible for the reinspection. Now, from a buyer's perspective, are you checking that for the buyer's responsibility or the seller's responsibility?
Most likely it's always the buyer's. And I've actually never done another reinspection so far.
Right. Usually if it's such a bad thing, we just cancel the contract if you're within that time frame and you move on. But if it does, it's usually about $100 to $200 to have the inspector come back out. I've done a handful, not many. Usually we don't. Usually you either get a credit for some repairs, or they have a licensed person do it. So, and that brings up another important thing is if you're a buyer, make sure that the seller knows that they need to use someone that's licensed.
Yes.
Don't be having the handyman do electrical work or roofing work. Have someone licensed in that particular thing. So, all right, we're moving along. Physical possession. So this is what happens at the end. We're getting a day or two before closing. How is the buyer getting the house? So what are the different options?
So mostly it's just after we get that email that, hey, the home is on the record, right?
From the yes.
From the escrow. So close of escrow, once the escrow says that the home is on record, that's when we are giving them the keys here.
So there is also, let's talk about, you talked about it earlier, a rent back. So a rent back is when the seller has to stay there for a few more days because their house isn't ready wherever they're moving, or maybe they're waiting for a moving company. Talk about that a little bit. The rent back for a buyer would consider for a seller.
So yeah, I mean,
they're not. We don't really want to do too many of these because if at all possible, we don't, because it just creates liability for everyone.
Correct. So I try to avoid it as much as possible and try to work with the closing date. That way the sellers are out, and then the day we are getting the keys, it's actually like
that's preferred.
That's what is preferred. But in a situation like what Ken wants to talk about, in multiple offer situations, we do want to consider what the seller wants. But again, we do have to have a lease in place.
Right.
Per day, just like, they are renting, like the word says, rent back. So now the seller is actually renting the home from the new buyer, from the new owner. So we have to go through those documents.
Right.
And so then we have to run the comps for the rent and then see.
Right. It gets a little sticky, but sometimes it's a contingent sale, so they got to sell, get the money to buy their own. So, if you have a knowledgeable agent, it's not that bad. It's not our preferred way of doing it, but there are circumstances that warrant it. So, but it's just another way that you can stand out, saying, "Hey, you need a rent back? Sure, I can give you 10 days."
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, whatever it takes to make the transaction happen, we'll get it done.
Yes. That's why she's a good agent.
to make the seller happy and the buyer happy, whatever it takes. We'll do it.
Watch our video on insurance, because when you switch from especially sellers, when you switch from owning the house to a tenant, and buyers have to have a different policy sometimes. Some insurance companies require you to have a landlord policy rather than an owner policy. We're not going to go way into that, but each party needs to make sure that they've talked to their insurance agents. And it's usually a very good idea to have liability insurance of $300,000 to $500,000. So if something happens, someone's get injured, all parties are happy. So you can get renter's insurance. Similar stuff.
Yes.
Look at the video. We're not going to talk about that anymore. All right, last one. What do you think it is?
I don't know. What do you have there?
Expiration offer. Expiration of the offer. So I'll go over it and I'm going to get your opinion.
Okay.
The contract, to make it a contract, has to have a date and a time when your offer expires. So you're a buyer. Hey, seller, I'm going to give you 24 hours. Hey, seller, I'm going to give you 48 hours. Now, some people try and be bullies as buyer's agents, say, I'm giving you 2 hours because they know it's a hot house. Is that the best strategy?
Not really. So here's the trick, right? So we have to be extremely careful. Now we are talking about multiple offer situation. So ideally, we would call the agent to see, hey, is he local? Is he traveling? Does the seller need some time to look at it? Is he manual? You can't talk to him on the email. You have to print things and take to the seller. So we want to be thoughtful about what the agent and the seller actually need. But again, we're talking about multiple offers, so we want to make sure that our offer gets in first and we get an answer first, because we don't want to give them too much time to look at so many offers. So there is that balance. So again, like I said before, communication is so important to see, are we actually going to give them 2 hours, or are we going to be generous and give them 48 hours? So that's going to totally depend on the situation.
Right. But again, those are the top 9 ways to improve your offer without, price is important. But I think she just proved is you got to have a very, very good agent that knows to look through all that, be communicating with the buyer's or the seller's agent. And basically, if you're a buyer, you got to kind of, find out what the seller wants. Yeah. If you want their house.
Yeah, definitely. Even the final walkthrough, right?
Yes.
I mean, even
number 10, you got to be, so. But we should do almost a one where we go through, because there's a lot of people who don't even understand the offers. We go through that with all of our clients.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I see offers come in all the time where the buyers have no idea what's going on in that contract. So,
Yeah.
which is
I've
frightening. So-
educated my buyers of the contract so much that they actually know to be a realtor and how to write a contract.
Right. So, all right. Well, that's the market update. 9 ways to improve your 10 ways to improve your offer without price. What else? You got anything else?
No, it's a great topic that you picked, Ken.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Thanks for the
if you
opportunity
need
again.
new home builds, we do all those. You call both of us. Yeah, and get out there. I think we have Washoe County School District next 2 weeks, and then it's going to
Spring break.
really pick up, right?
Yeah, once the spring break is over, it's going to really pick up. So have those pre-approvals ready. Walk with your realtor to see what you need to do to get that home ready
Get
for
your
sale.
house call now. So if you're working with her and you're on the fence or me, we're just encourage everyone to get going because even this little spring, it's supposed to snow today, but
Yeah.
even that little burst, you just see a lot more activity. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, subscribe.
Yeah.
And we're going to put it out all over social media, and we look forward to helping you guys when you give us a call.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.